Welcome to the Predictive Playbook. I'm your host, John Ryan of John Ryan Sports, and I'm very pleased to have Adam Trigger joining us from Top Flight SI, Top Flight Sports, and new member of the Sports Memo team. And that's what's best of all with this situation. Great to have a smart mind like him on the team as well. Adam Trigger is a specialist in college hoops and Major League Baseball, and international soccer right now is featuring the World Cup qualifying for the 22 World Cup. So we're going to have a lot to talk about here. Well, first of all, Adam, welcome to the show. I appreciate your time coming on, and just really excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. I can't wait for baseball season. College hoop is absolutely one of my specialties. Hasn't been the last week or so. I've been on the wrong end of just about everything for the past week. But prior to that, I had a winning season. As of right now, I'm showing a small profit. And I talked about this a little bit in college football too. COVID's really thrown everything for a loop this year. So it was hard to sort of figure out what to expect. And, I obviously wish I had a better NCAA tournament. I had a great conference tournament and a great first 3 days. Last week has been a little tough, but I'm still showing a plus for the year, which is always the goal. And hopefully, I'm not sure if I'm going to play a game this weekend or not. I definitely have some thoughts, but hopefully we can at least add one more winner and then move into baseball, which is probably my favorite time of the year. So.
Well, I have to admit, baseball, I've coached a lot of baseball, 12U to 18U type teams in a pretty big program out of Voorhees, New Jersey, where Mike Trout actually came out of. And the founder probably put about 3,500 kids in college baseball programs. So that's, when sports get you to a school that's better than what you could have got, I think that's what it's all about. It's not always about making the major league level. But, I have to admit, too, Adam, this is my second losing NCAA tournament season in the last 11, and it's been rather scary. I don't know too many pros like ourselves that are doing well in this thing because it's so erratic. Nobody saw UCLA coming. Tony Finn and Rob Vino, who are on my show, as you know, in the 4:30 daily, also, couldn't believe it. Big Blue scored 48 points. Like you just in a million years would even think of that happening. Even my machine learning stuff said there was less than a 1% probability that Michigan was going to score 48. It just doesn't add up.
No, and it's kind of what makes the NCAA tournament so great. The sort of the wide range of potential results and things that can happen. But yeah, I would agree with you. The NCAA tournament this year, I think the biggest thing why you're probably seeing a lot of pro handicappers not turn in the best results on it is the overvalued teams keep getting there. So Gonzaga's laying 13 against Creighton and they get it done. Some of the very public underdogs. Now, I think a lot of underdogs in the NCAA tournament have a strong public backing. But what that means when there's a sort of a public dog is the line is probably shaded a little bit. And so I think what you're seeing is a lot of the pro bettors are seeing value on a team like Michigan or maybe a team like Alabama when they played UCLA on Saturday night. And a lot of those haven't got there. And I know for me, the last couple of days I've just been on the wrong end of just some bad call. I had USC last night.
I was with you.
Yeah, and it's just, but what can you do? That you got to just kind of battle through it. Fortunately, I had a really good championship weekend, and I hit pretty much everything the first 3 days of the tournament. So, you know how it is, give and take. Try to take more than you give back, and unfortunately, I'm in give back mode in March. I had just a huge February. It was from a unit count standpoint, it was one of my best months since 2019. And, I'm going to give quite a bit of it back in March, but that is how it goes. And hopefully we take it back in April. And, the goal is to just have more at the end of the year than you started with. And I think we will do that because it's what we usually do. So
right. The long-term track record is there. And that's really what sportsmemo.com is all about, and wagertalk.com. It sucks that people buy a subscription to the tournament and it doesn't work out. I get it. I feel bad about it. At the same time, those people are going to get a free month on the house, and hopefully we demonstrate what usually happens. But I'll tell you what I'm doing in the futures market for the tournament final. I ran my probability application, and it came up, believe it or not, with Houston.
Okay.
30% chance to win it. Plus, I nailed it yesterday at plus 500. I haven't even checked where it is today. And let's see, second was Gonzaga at 25%, then Baylor 22, and then Houston. So, Houston was pretty far down the list, and they were coming up as the team that had the best chance of winning the whole thing, and nobody's talking about them. They're not even considered up there. Like, I read an article from one of the main outlets, and they considered Houston like an also ran like UCLA. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? But that builds into as a professional, that makes you feel good that you might have the right pick. Whether I do or not is another story. But
sure,
I don't know. Did you look at any futures like that yet?
I did. So one thing I'm holding from the beginning of the season is Baylor at 10-1, and I have it's pretty big. It'll be personally. I know we're going to talk MLB futures in a minute, and I don't count. I give those out sort of on Twitter. I always give those out for free. I don't really count them into my record and whatnot, and Baylor won't count in my record. But I'm always happy to chat futures with anyone that DMs me or wants an opinion. If I have one, I'll give it. I tweet a lot of that stuff out just in passing. So yeah, Baylor, I have them at 10-1. So I will be taking some of that Houston. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do it yet. I've gotten to this point without hedging. I let it ride through the Nova game and the Arkansas game. I was close to trying to middle with Arkansas at +8, and I didn't, and it worked out. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do, whether it's going to be, put something on Houston +5 and try to play for a little middle. I think Houston deserves to be getting talked about. I don't know why. I mean, they're a really good team. I personally like Baylor in the matchup, but I think the AAC was down is a little bit overblown because, the West Coast Conference was not good at all. And look at Gonzaga. So, I think that's another thing I'm hearing a lot of is Houston hasn't played they played one top 30 KenPom team all year. It was Texas Tech way back in the early part of the season. I do think there's a little bit of relevance to that. But in terms of the way these two teams match up, I'll tell you this, it's probably going to take a pretty good jump shooting effort from Baylor to win this game. Baylor they tend to not play through the post like an elite team would. And Houston has a couple of really scrappy, good shot blockers, good defensive post players where they will make it difficult on Baylor on the inside. Now, if Baylor can shoot the ball, and if the shots are falling similar to what we saw in the second half against Villanova, what we saw at points during the Arkansas game, I mean, they will probably control the game. For Houston, they're going to need to make their threes as well. They take a ton of threes. I like Baylor defensively, so I still lean Baylor in the game. I don't know that I'll get to the window with a minus. Well, for me personally, it probably doesn't even make sense to play a -5 because I would most likely be hedging off some of my 10-1. But in terms of a recommendation, I lean Baylor to win the game. I would say if you absolutely made me, and I just did another show and I said if I had to pick one, it would be Baylor -5. I don't even know if I'll actually make an official play in either of the NCAA games this weekend. We're getting down to the point where it's going to be tough to find value. The odds makers generally don't make many mistakes once there's only 2 games left in the season, 3 games left in the season. So yeah, it'll most likely be a stay away from an individual game betting standpoint, but I might try to maneuver my way onto Houston in some capacity, just because I'm pretty invested personally on Baylor to win the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a good breakdown there for an early look at the weekend games. Betting flows here. I just pulled up wagertalk.com/odds, which is a great website for odds, because it gives you all the Las Vegas books.
Yeah.
And I put a lot more credence in that than, other ones.
Yeah. And let's just to kind of play off that real quick. If you do like Baylor, I would take it now, because I only can see that going to 5.5 or 6. So if you like Baylor and you think that's what you want to be on, don't wait. You won't see, in my opinion, you're not going to see 5 minus 110 for much longer. I would say you're gonna start to see, you'll start to see 5 minus 120s, and eventually it's going to go to 5.5. And based on the way Baylor's been kind of getting bet so far this tournament, I know we saw a pretty big move with Baylor in the Villanova game. I want to say they opened 6, got all the way up to 8 at one point. I don't know that this one will move like that, but I would be shocked to see Baylor minus 4.5 at any point. So I think if you wanted to bet Baylor, get it in now. If you
agree.
Like Houston, might as well just wait. Wait as long as you can, because I can only see that line moving in one direction. And so I would say that'd be the best way to play it if you're looking to go down on that game.
It's early, but number of tickets is 72% and 82% of the money. So that right there, with this many days left until the game actually starts, you could end up seeing 6.5 here. Make no mistake about it. When these things get moving this early, they tend to keep going, especially in championship games like this. Over. This is one of the first overs I've seen the whole entire tournament that opened at 133. Now it's higher. I mean, that's a shocker right there.
Yeah, it is.
But I think it's for good reason. I'm kind of leaning towards the over now. I think if Houston gives them a game, I would think it has to go over more likely than under.
Yeah, I mean, I don't play a ton of totals when it comes to college basketball, but what I'll say about this one is it feels like a game that's either going to go way under, because it's just a possession by possession game and no one's hitting their shots, or both of these teams are nailing threes and it's going to soar over, because Houston's going to shoot the 3. Like, that's just, they take a bunch of threes, even though they play at a slow pace. They shoot a lot of threes, and I think we commented already about Baylor's sort of unwillingness to play through the post, and Houston does a good job in the post. So I think you're going to see Baylor take quite a few outside shots as well. I know the whole Lucas Oil Stadium thing, and a lot of games played under the last round, but it will be both teams' sort of second crack at a game in this setup. So that could help the offensive numbers. It's a tough one to gauge, but I would almost say, if you want if it's going to trend that way, I think the reason it's probably moving up is 134.5 or 135 was like perceived to be a little bit low. It probably is under normal circumstances. I think when you factor in the venue and sort of like the number of possessions that could be in this game, it's probably a good number. But I have a feeling that we're either going to see the low scoring game everyone expects, apparently, that's just going to crawl, or these teams are going to be knocking threes down and it's going to be like just well beyond that total, which is why I have no interest in getting involved with it. But I definitely think there's a path to the over, because you're going to see a lot of 3-point shots. And of course, if they're falling, I mean, that can run up a score relatively quickly. So,
Yeah, it's very true. Very true. The lines basically say a 70 to 65 Baylor win.
Yeah,
But with the Gonzaga game, I can tell you this is like an 80-66 game. And when Gonzaga scores 81 or more, this is all from my database, they're near perfect against the spread.
yeah. I mean,
And,
well, part of the misery for me this last week is I keep finding myself going against Gonzaga, and I felt like they were laying a premium number against Creighton. I still think they were. Creighton lost the game by 18. They went 5 for 21 from three. They just played a bad game, and I think last night USC played a bad game. I mean, for the first time in 2 games, they couldn't get a shot to fall after they just torched Oregon and Kansas, shooting 60 some odd percent from three. Which, in hindsight, when I go back and sort of after a loss, look at what went wrong, and do my just sort of, internal recap of the play I made. Yeah, I mean, I guess USC coming back down to earth, shooting the ball was it's not like I guess I could, in hindsight, well, yeah, maybe they needed to cool off a little bit, but USC they just were nowhere to be found on defense. And it wasn't just Gonzaga running good offense. I just felt like there wasn't much defensive energy, effort. I was just kind of like joking with someone, and I'm a little older, that I'm in my mid 30s. So for me, when you were getting run out like that 15, 20 years ago, and someone was just going to come down through the lane and throw it down in your face, like, I didn't see one hard foul, nothing to sort of say, hey, we're down 12. Like, maybe send a message like, we're not just going to roll over and let you go straight to the rim. And I just felt like USC has 2 7-footers essentially. And they're a top 30. I mean, their defensive numbers, they're top 30, top 40 defensive team all season. And I felt like they were content with just letting Gonzaga do whatever they wanted. Never
in the beginning.
Yeah, I just thought we might have seen a little bit of an edge from USC in the second half, come out and be a little bit more physical, try to do something. I mean, your season's on the line. Gonzaga's doing whatever they wanted. And they're getting to the rim. All the paints are in the point, or all the points are in the paint.
Yep.
So, just plant someone and at least put it in their head that, if I come through the lane, someone's here to greet me. Maybe they'll shoot some threes. It's not to say Gonzaga wouldn't have knocked down some threes, but I will say this. I think UCLA, at least in the toughness department, is a little bit more tougher than USC is right now. They obviously had to play the first 4 game. I definitely think they've got this us against the world sort of mentality right now. And I mean, they clearly believed they could beat Alabama, and they believed they could beat Michigan, and they did. Now, Alabama helped them out. That was obviously, it was a historically poor free throw shooting performance by Alabama for UCLA to get there. But what I saw last night, UCLA was the tougher team than Michigan. I mean, Michigan came back. I mean, Michigan had the lead late. They came back and took the lead. Every time Michigan took the lead, UCLA had an answer. So the only way I could play that game this weekend would probably be to take the points. And again, I'll probably wait because I'm already seeing, I see Pinnacle move to 14.5. It's usually a good barometer of where the market's going to go. So I think you'll start to see this move off of 14, go to 14.5. I mean, the way these Gonzaga lines have moved, there was even a late move up to 9, back up to 9 last night. So if you're going to fade Gonzaga, your best bet is to probably wait. And I'm not saying I'll even get there with this one, but I think if I was going to make a play this weekend on either of the games, the most likely spot I would look to would probably just to take a good number with UCLA as it gets closer to the game, in hopes that it's just too many, and even if Gonzaga wins, they, maybe come back down to earth a little bit where they win by 10, 11 in more of a less of a one-sided game, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's going to be, the good news, we still have time to make our decisions on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
But transitioning here to Major League Baseball, and I know this is probably your favorite sport, and it's certainly one of mine. I actually had, when I was working on Wall Street, I had Philly season tickets, believe it or not, for 21 years.
Awesome.
Which is more than half of the time that you've been on the planet, Adam. I'm told I look younger than my age, so that's a good thing.
I mean, I'll be 35 this summer. I'm told I look younger than my age too. So,
I just had my 60th just like a week ago. And,
happy birthday!
Oh, thanks. I mean, it truly is just a number. I mean,
yeah,
the world is a lot different than it was even 20 years ago with age, and
yeah. Although this business will age you quickly,
It can, Wall Street was fun too.
Yeah,
I was on the institutional side. I was a currency strategist. So a lot of that, technique of trading, I now apply to the in-game.
Yeah,
it's just like trading, not necessarily day trading, but it's like trading.
Yeah. And
I had this plan in the Gonzaga game last night. I mentioned on the show, and I was going to try to create a 20-point middle that Tony Finn and Rob Vino thought was very doable, and I didn't get one of them off.
I mean, there was zero in-game opportunity for Gonzaga last night because it was 7-0, and then it was never close. So yeah.
And then with the total, it was, we never got to the extremes. Like I actually have a little bot I created in Python that calculates points per minute. So if you go 7.2 points per minute for 3 minutes or more, that's an under live bet. And then if you get below 3, like 2.75 for 3 or more minutes, then that's the over bet. So I was trying to get those situations, which did happen in the Creighton Gonzaga game, which I had the over, and in game was as high as 177, but the game play of the over lost. But nevertheless, we'll move on to baseball here.
They Creighton for their 5 for 21 from 3. It cost me as well. So,
but there was 52 points scored in the first 10 minutes, and
yeah,
I know the all-time high score in NCAA history is 193 points, and I was thinking, wow, this could be in jeopardy. There was no doubt in my mind it was going over, but it obviously didn't.
I know.
But
that was an odd game, right? Because I felt the same way in terms of, I was like, man, like both these teams are just going to keep scoring.
Yep.
And then after the first 10 minutes, I attribute a lot of that to just Creighton couldn't hit a shot, and I think Gonzaga realized that they just didn't need to, play their most efficient game the rest of the way.
Yep.
We're going to probably be fine. So.
Well, we'll move on to baseball here, and let's start with the NL West, which is I read your notes before we came on the air, and I'm very intrigued to hear your commentary about this, because I think there's a lot of value in the team that you are kind of leaning on here, and I see the reasons why. The Dodgers are minus 250, and for good reason. Padres plus 200, and then there's the rest: the Giants, Diamondbacks, Rockies, all 5,000.
Yeah.
But there might be a gem here. There might be a gem, and I think if I remember right, you're kind of liking the Diamondback chances, and also with the wins total too.
Yeah. So this would be, if I had to give out a best bet for preseason MLB futures, this is it. And it's going to be the Diamondbacks over 74 wins. Now, I would shop that around. I saw 74 at Circa yesterday. I actually took 74.5 personally, and then got more down on 74. I've seen this as high as 76 some places. So, like with anything, you're always going to want to shop around, and really with MLB futures, you have to shop around because they're going to be different a lot of different places. Just to comment on the NL West in general before we get into the Diamondbacks. So what you have here is two teams that arguably are the best two teams in the National League, not just the NL West, the National League, in the Dodgers and the Padres. And listen, this Dodgers team, they are this good. It's just there's no betting value on the Dodgers at this point. And the Padres, I actually think if you wanted to take a stab with, like, if you really liked both of these teams, and we'll get into NL World Series futures in a minute, but I think you could definitely take a stab at the Padres to either win the NL or win the World Series, because they're going to be shaded. The line has to be shaded a little bit with the thought that they probably won't win their division, because the Dodgers are clearly the favorite to win the division. But the Padres might very well be the second best team. I would almost think that would be a lot of people's consensus. Second best team in the NL is San Diego. So
I would give you that for sure.
I think you're going to get some value if you wanted to look at, like, I wouldn't bet them to win the division. I don't think you get the right value there, because then you have to beat the Dodgers. But taking them to win the NL or to win the World Series, there's ways around. They don't necessarily need to outperform the Dodgers during the regular season to do that, because they can get in as a wild card team, and then they can, play their way through the playoffs. And I think, as we know, the playoffs becomes more who's playing well at that time, and something going right in a short series than it would be them outperforming the Dodgers over 162 games, or however many games we get in this year. Hopefully everyone gets in 162. Where I see the most value, though, is, so anyone that followed me last year, I was really high on the Diamondbacks last year, and that didn't work out. They really ended up being one of the worst teams in the NL. But I think, and I'll just throw this out there for anyone looking at baseball coming into the season, I would put a lot more stock into 2019 numbers than I would 2020, whether it be from how a team, how a team performed over the 60 games to individual player numbers, because I just don't think 60 games was like a big enough sample size, to really sort of evaluate a team or some. It was a sprint season, and what happened to a team like Arizona, and this happened to some other teams, they started off poorly, they went on a prolonged losing streak, and 25 games into the season, it was pretty clear that they were out of it. So there was very little incentive, not to mention no fans in the stands. So it wasn't even like, you're showing up and playing for people that paid for a ticket. There was really no, I think you saw it a little bit with the Red Sox too. Like, there was just no sort of incentive or reason to play. You just saw a lot of lackluster effort. And I think the Diamondbacks really sort of gave up last year. And so I think that skewed them down. I think it skewed them down a little bit because they performed so poorly. Now, don't get me wrong. They played bad. Like, I was way off on that team last year. They were never close. I don't even know that they ever made it above 500, but a lot of that same team is back. And I wasn't the only one high on the Diamondbacks going into the last season. And I look at their team, and I do think they have a reasonably good lineup, a lineup that can produce runs. I know everyone said, well, so now the big narrative is that Zach Gallen, who was by far their best player, best pitcher, but he was their best player. He has a hairline fracture in his forearm, which is never good. From what I read, he's really not happy about it, because it's an injury he picked up while doing bunting or hitting drills. And he's a big proponent of the DH in both leagues, which I am as well at this point. It's just, I don't know why we still have pitchers hit, even though I love the strategy that it sort of brings to the game. But at this point, I don't know. I just don't know why we're doing different things in each league. Let's either have all the pitchers hit, or let's just not have any of them hit. But so Gallen's out. I would say best case scenario, he's back by the All-Star break. And obviously a forearm injury could open itself up to some big time complications where we might not even see him this year. So I sort of handicap this with the Gallen coming back potentially as a bonus. I mean, they have Caleb Smith, who's new to the team. He's from the Marlins, and I look at their pitching staff. It's Madison Bumgarner, which everyone is essentially saying is cooked. He's done. Like he's just, and I don't fully agree with that. He's a veteran. And, we've seen veteran guys like have their drop off. That is inevitable. Only Tom Brady beats time. No one else can beat, at some point there's going to be a drop off. Bumgarner had that, but it doesn't always mean, especially in pitching, you can go back to see like guys like Tom Glavine when they lost velocity, or even last year like Adam Wainwright. I mean, there was some time, there was a period of time where he looked like he was on his way out of the league. And these guys can absolutely reinvent themselves. And I have to think Bumgarner is going to outperform expectations at least a little bit this year. You look at the rest of their rotation. I've always liked Luke Weaver, and I think he can be pretty productive. And I think if you can get half decent effort from three of those guys, Merrill Kelly included, he's had his stretches where he's been pretty good, and he's newer to the majors, but he had a pretty long career. He's probably 30 at this point. He pitched for years over in Asia. And he's got decent stuff. I think if you get decent seasons from like three of those starters, there's a lot of winnable games on Arizona's schedule. And I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they're just going to lose every time they play to the Dodgers or Padres. So, because those games tend to be pretty competitive regardless, you can go back years and years. Arizona has been a last place team before. And it's always a game when they play San Diego and the Dodgers. The Rockies are awful. They will finish last in this division. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. That team is going to finish last in this division. I would be shocked if they outperform even Arizona or San Francisco, who I don't think is that good. But if you look at it like that, there's quite a few winnable games on Arizona's schedule just via the Rockies and the Giants. I think they're going to outperform people's expectations against the Dodgers and the Padres. And when it gets to that point, I mean, 74 wins. I mean, if you're playing 500 ball and you get all 162 in, that's 80. That's 81 and 81. So, I mean, we're not even talking. I think Arizona can play 500 ball, but we don't even need them to here. Like 75, 76, 77 wins is going to cash the ticket. And a couple other things I'll throw out there. Blake Snell made a comment about the baseballs, and I think other players agree that they're definitely doing something to the ball to sort of rein in all the home runs and try to sort of even that out. Major League Baseball loves to mess with the ball, and
it's true.
They do. I mean, even in recent years, you had them using different balls at AA than they had at AAA, and they're always trying to tweak the ball a little bit. And Arizona's been playing with deadened balls for a couple of years now, because a few years back they decided Chase Field was too much of a launching pad, and so they've been modifying the balls for at least 3 or 4 seasons at Chase Field to reduce offense. So I think that they'll be less. I don't think the ball is a huge thing in your handicapping, but Arizona's been playing with a more dead version of a ball for a few years there, so it might not affect them that as much. And historically, if you go back the last 10 years, Arizona has been a team that's done this before, where they went from last to a playoff team. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen this year. I don't think this team is going to threaten for the playoffs, but I do think that we could see a little bounce back, and I think we could see Arizona be the team that a lot of people expected them to be last year. And I think if that ends up being the case, I'm guessing that it happens with them winning more than 74 games. So that's kind of how I arrived at this as the best season win total bet I could find out there. I
made a couple of queries while you were talking. For what it's worth, the last 3 years, it's 2018, 19, and 20. Now we have the 21 season, obviously, but the last 3 years against the Rockies, they're 23 and 25 straight up. Really nothing. 24 and 23 on the over. They're 20 and 28 You know what? I accidentally ran the Padres.
Yeah, and I almost think that it comes up like that, but I would almost sense a little value there because the Rockies are much, much worse than this year than they've been.
Yep.
Even in the past 5 years where they weren't sort of competing in this division. I mean, I look at that roster and I don't see how that team. I'm not going to really make a prediction on how many games they win because I still think Coors Field gives them a little bit of a home field advantage, but I don't see how they outperform Arizona or San Francisco, and I don't think there's any question that the Dodgers and the Padres. It would be very shocking to see one of them not finish for those two teams not finish 1-2. So
yeah, even with a few injuries, they're so deep.
They're both
so deep.
They're both loaded. They're both deep. So it's really going to come down to Arizona. Arizona, in my opinion, if they can take more games off the Dodgers and the Padres than anyone thinks they can, I think they can, just because as the regular season grind sort of goes on. I mean, once you play a team enough, just kind of think about it in any division. Even when the Marlins were really bad, they would still kind of step up and steal a game or two from the Phillies or the Nationals or the Braves. Like it just happens in your own division. So, I think it's more likely if the Dodgers and the Padres, when they lose games, it's going to be more likely they lose them in the division. Because once you see, I mean, even the best, like, well, let's just throw like a Walker Buehler out there or someone like that.
Yeah.
Even the best pitchers, I mean, all these guys are major league hitters. And even the best pitchers, once you see them a few times, like guys are going to figure them out a little bit. Even the worst teams. So typically, if I ever look to when I look to fade these really good teams, I love betting a +1.5 run line. It's one of my favorite bets to make, especially when you can do it with a visitor, because you cut off that you basically force the home team to beat you in 8 at bats as opposed to 9. I love taking a +1.5 run line with a visitor, and I'll generally look to do it in the division. And I've always felt like the opportunities become more prevalent toward about 2 to 3 months into the season, because you start to get some form in the division. So, whereas like Walker Buehler might go out and just torch someone that hasn't seen him, and I just keep using him as an example. You could sub that out with any top pitcher. By the time even a team like the Rockies, let's say, that see a guy 5 times, like they're probably going to start putting the ball in play on them. And yeah, it works both ways, but I think it gives it's a little bit of an equalizer. And that's why I think, that's why I think the Diamondbacks can get there a few more times than people think against the Padres and the Dodgers. They've always had a nice little home field advantage at Chase Field. I think that they've always sort of played well there. I don't have numbers in front of me, but
28-20 since 2018 are the Diamondbacks against the Padres. So they're 8 games over 500.
I don't think that it's going to be a whitewash like many think, where it's just going to be Dodgers constantly beat it. And I think the same goes a little bit for the Giants too. I'm not as high on that team, but the Dodgers and the Padres are going to lose some games in the division. It's just you can rest assured that at some point this season, both of those teams are going to probably rattle off like 13 and 14. They're just gonna go on runs because they're so deep. They have the pitching, and but it doesn't mean, I mean, even the best teams, right? Even the best baseball teams still are going to still lose between 60 and 65 games usually. I mean, every once in a while you'll have an outlier where someone puts up a 105 or 106, but it's not usually the top teams in the league win 102, 103, 104. Sometimes there's a bigger, sometimes there's a 110, and so I just think 74 just seems like a really doable number for this Arizona team, and that's why it's my it's the best, it's the biggest and most confident future bet I made so far.
It's excellent stuff. I'm sure Tyler Clippard will make an impact there too.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big acquisition, kind of.
It is, and I think it just if you look at the Diamondbacks roster, it doesn't. there's not a lot of star power, but they have some solid players, and I don't think there's any reason that, I think too, especially if they can get off to a good start and have a little bit of confidence going into week 3 or week 4, whereas last year they blew games late, and they just never really had anything good happen. I think if they can get off to a good start, which is almost like random in baseball with who just comes out and really plays well the first week or two. I mean, you've seen Dodgers teams the past years that they were clearly the best team, and they're sitting there at the end of April at like 14-13. And then they just sort of assert their dominance as the year goes on. But every year you see one of these teams kind of pop out and just get hot early, and they can potentially ride it to a pretty good season. So yeah, I just think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of ways to 74 or more wins for Arizona, and I've locked that in at this point. And it's still out there. It was at circa at 74. Yeah, actually, you're going to probably see 74s now because I think some of the odds makers might have adjusted for Gallen being out potentially most of the year. So,
yep. Well, that's good stuff, Adam. Really good. That's I know you have some interest in the American League East too. A division that's pretty similar because you have the Yankees, of course, minus 200, and right off the top, I would not take the Yankees this year in the division. Injuries. They always have both the big guns out at some point during the season, and if they don't, then they're probably going to win the division. But the Blue Jays, I think, and the Rays are always sneaky good teams. The Blue Jays, I think, are your preferred over those two teams, and then the Red Sox. I mean, who knows? The Red Sox are in the infamous rebuilding phase, but at plus 2,000 pizza money. I think I'm all over that one too.
Yeah, I tweeted that out actually. I couldn't agree with you more. The Yankees, minus 250 to win this division is ridiculous. Listen, their lineup is going to be great. I don't think there's any question about that. But just the way that they've suffered injuries last year in a 60-game season. I mean, now we're looking at 162. They're already going into the season with a couple injuries, and I'm not sold on their pitching. Now, it could end up being very good, but I'm not fully sold on their pitching. And I mean, I just think there's this foregone conclusion that they're gonna win 100 105 games, and they're gonna run away with the division. And there's some really good teams in this division. I just don't think they priced the Yankees correctly. And so my whole goal here was to try to find a way to take advantage of that. Now, again, if you followed me last year, I got this one I kind of got right. I was really high on the Blue Jays last year, and I made some money on that because Toronto ended up being a playoff team. Granted, they kind of snuck in with the 8-team format, but Toronto ended up being a pretty good team, and they did that with Bo Bichette being hurt.
Look, a big name there.
Vlad Guerrero looks awesome. He's dropped a bunch of weight, and I think there's a lot of steam for him being potentially leading the league in home runs. There's MVP talk for him, all of which I think is valid. So the way I rate out lineups, I think the Blue Jays have the best lineup in the American League. At least from a potential standpoint, with the way I look at some of the players on their team.
Especially in the bottom end.
Yeah.
6, 7, 8, 9.
They have a really good lineup. A guy I just mentioned, I mean, something I haven't bet this because I really couldn't find it and it dropped a little bit. But I mean, if you can get like 25-1 or better on Bo Bichette to lead the league in hits, he's going to be super protected in this lineup. He was never really healthy last year. I mean, but this kid, I read scouts a couple of years ago saying that his sort of individual WAR, the way they one of the more advanced metrics that they use to rate out individuals was comparable to Mike Trout when Trout was coming through the minors. So he's an incredible talent. They have a lot of young talent, and young talent seems to play these days in baseball. and I know the Rays have that too, and I have a counter argument for that, but I do think that, these are younger guys, but they're a little bit proven at this point. Kevin Biggio has done some things at the major league level. Bo Bichette had an awesome end to 2019. And I mean, if we're talking about Vlad Jr. as like a possible guy that could lead the league in homers or like an MVP candidate, I mean, that's a fantastic lineup. You add George Springer. I mean, they've got the offense for sure. And I think the thing that is pretty much the obvious counter to, if you were going to fade the Blue Jays, the obvious counter to that is where's the pitching there? Because that's
they did. They picked up David Phelps, Francisco Liriano, and a few others. It's didn't mean to interrupt you, but just
no,
Tyler Chatwood's in that list.
Well, and I just I wanted to just make sure I didn't leave anyone out, because I actually really like some of the signings that they made in the pitching department. Now, obviously last year they went out and got Hyunjin Ryu, who he's solid. I mean, he's going to be someone that he's going to give you front end of the rotation stuff. I mean, even if he doesn't replicate what he did with the Dodgers 2 years ago, he's a veteran, and he seems less prone to like age catching up with him because he doesn't throw very hard. He's more of a location guy. And I think he's like super effective in today's major league, in today's baseball, because no one's trying to put the ball in play anymore. Everyone's just trying to kill the ball. It's a home run, a strikeout, or a walk.
Makes me sick.
It's like, it's annoying to someone that grew up playing the game, coaching the game. And I coached youth like you did for years, that 14, 15, 16-year-old age range. And it was like all about just strategy, putting the ball in play. I used to bunt constantly. I just try to do anything, to move runners, put the team in the position to win. And it's like the analytics people have sort of siphoned that out of the game. But the problem is these guys get up and face someone like Hyunjin Ryu, who's going to just locate on the outer half of the plate, and suddenly, trying to kill the ball turns into pop flies and sort of soft contact. You'll see guys, you'll see right-handed hitters roll roll a slow pitch over and because they couldn't get under it, and it's a ground out. So I really like him, and a guy that, has probably cost me more money than almost any individual on the planet in any sport. Robbie Ray, I've always been high on this guy. He's just never really lived up to expectations, less like maybe, 2 years ago, I think he had a really good season with Arizona. Last year, this guy just cost me I had an awesome baseball season last year. And I hope to replicate it this year, but I always seem to run into Robbie Ray when he just has, he has like the mental implosion type game. But stuff-wise, he's got great stuff, and you have to wonder if a little bit of a change of scenery and maybe just, being on a new team, a good team, a really good team, could be beneficial to him. The guy, and there's some other new names in this, in their rotation, or guys they have that they could put in their rotation. You've got Steven Matz, you have Tanner Roark, Ross Stripling. It's not, I don't think it's out of the realm that one of them steps up and has a pretty good year. And the guy that I was sky high on last year was a rookie, Nate Pearson. He was very erratic when he first came up. Definitely needed to go back to the drawing board in terms of like harnessing his stuff a little bit, but he can throw. He throws hard. He's 6'6". He got hurt too, so he only made a couple starts. He missed most of the season, the 60-game season. Came back. I want to say he came back and maybe pitched out of the bullpen or made a start right at the end of the year. But he was a hot name coming into last year, and I feel like no one's talking about him this year because he kind of came up and it didn't all go his way. But yeah, I mean, I really think that he could be excellent if he can cut down the walks and show a little bit of command. He could be very good. And the biggest thing, the thing that makes me absolutely love the Blue Jays to get there with all these sort of, to win the NL, to win and I'll go through them in a second. They have a top 5 farm system, and they have the pieces where if they can get to the trade deadline and they're right in it and they're very competitive, they will move guys, in my opinion, to take a shot this year. I think they will. They have the pieces in the farm system, and I think if you added one more really like just stud ace to this rotation, I don't think we would have pitching issues with with the Jays. At least not the ones that
I agree.
At least not the ones that people are perceiving. And now
I think
just
too. I might add here, George Springer. I think is a huge acquisition because he's one of my favorite guys to bet after he went hitless.
sure.
The team is Houston was 15-4 last year when he was hitless the game before, 37-6 in 2019, 30-15 in 2018, 31-19 in 2017.
Yeah,
You would think that that's going to carry over, so
of course. I'd be really surprised if I fully expect him to have a productive season. I'd be shocked if he doesn't.
I would too. He's not that old.
Yeah, I mean, you might see. I wouldn't be shocked if he got off to a slower start just based on he's going to be seeing some pitchers he's not used to. Having spent his entire career in the NL Central at this point. I mean, he's going to see some arms that he's not fully accustomed to, but he's also extremely protected in that lineup. I mean, it's going to be pick your poison with the first 5-6 guys in that Jays lineup. So there should be plenty of opportunity for him to see pitches if he's going to hit in front of. I don't know exactly how they're going to do their order, but I'm assuming they'll have him hit either first or near the top. He's going to be right up there with Bichette and Vlad, and I mean, it's just. There really is no reason to think that he won't be super impactful on this team. So,
yep.
So yeah,
I like that pick. I like to pick a lot with Toronto because I hate favorites. It's end up being right, but I mean you're getting zero return.
Right, and the thing is, I always tell people with futures, if you're going to tie money up, which is what you're doing here when you're betting season-long futures.
Yep.
There's no value in doing it with a favorite because you're probably going to be able to come back 6 months from now, 5 months from now, August. Let's say the Yankees have a stretch where they do pick up injuries, and now all of a sudden the Rays are in first or the Jays are in first. You're most likely going to have a chance to make that bet later in the season at a similar price. So there's no point in taking a team like the Yankees or the Dodgers or one of these favorites to win even if you think they are or think they will to win the division, because it's just not a good use of your money. It's not a good way to tie your money. Just to run through my list of Blue Jays futures, I took them every which way possible. I'm really all in on this team doing something. There's a couple of ones that I could potentially maneuver out of if they get far enough, but Blue Jays to win the AL East as of yesterday was still plus 475 at Circa. Now I know everyone is not Las Vegas based. I was fortunate enough where I was out there for 2 weeks. I just got back like a week ago, so I was able to get a lot of this stuff down when I was out there. But other sites have it. You might see this plus 400, plus 350 on other sites, but I really like the Blue Jays to win the AL East at 4-1 or better, or as close as you can get to that. And then I just took them across the board: 4-1 to win the AL East, 9-1 to win the AL pennant, so to win the American League, 22-1 to win the World Series. I think they have a really good chance to get to the playoffs, and the reason I see value in the Blue Jays is I'm going to fade the thought that the Rays will be a playoff team this year. I I definitely think the Rays could hit their season win total. It's why I'm not going Rays season win total under, because I don't think it's impossible that they win 86, 87 games. It'll probably come right out to that, but there's a lot of unproven with this Tampa team. And I know that historically they've been good with sort of bringing up the Randy Arozarena and having them produce, but it feels to me like the Rays are relying heavily, really heavily on unproven right now. And,
they're certainly young.
Super young. And I think there's this expectation now that Arozarena, I saw he's like the shortest price in the AL and Rookie of the Year voting. And, it's one thing to do it when no one expects you to do it. And last year, no one knew who Randy Arozarena was. He was red hot on the biggest stage, and no one had a scouting report on him. But this year, now you're going to have a little film on him, and there's going to be a big time expectation for him to be the guy, I feel like, because the other guys that are really sort of the guys that I keep hearing as, well, the Rays are really good, and this is why. You've got the names are escaping me right now, but they're the younger prospects. It's the guys that could potentially come up. I think is it Wander Franco, and I'm like the forgetting the names, but there's a couple of prospects that they're super high on that I think sort of puts them into discussion. I know they got Chris Archer back. I'm not really sure how much Chris Archer has left in the tank. Rich Hill is someone I've always liked, but again, he's getting up there. I think he can give them some quality innings, but they're going to go with they're going to rely heavily on their bullpen again. Nick Anderson is out, so it's one of those things where Kevin Cash is a great manager. The Rays are a great organization. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but I think that I just feel like they're a team that profiles as a team that maybe overachieved a little bit last year. And if these guys sort of return, if these guys come back down to earth a little bit, I think they are probably a candidate to fall short of the lofty expectations that everyone has set for them. So
I can't disagree. I like to pick on Toronto a lot.
Yeah, and then just to round it out, I mean, listen, I know the Red Sox are probably not going to be that good, but if you're going to hang 25-1 to win the division out there, I mean, I got to throw something on it because it's still Boston. It's still a franchise that expects to win. They have a couple good prospects that I could see being up and making an impact sooner than later. And to me, they're not 20. They can't be 25-1. They just can't be. Like if you threw a 10 or 15-1 up, I probably have no interest. But at between 20 and 25-1, crazier things have happened. There's
pizza money. It's just true pizza money.
Exactly. And they're another team that last year, I mean, they just didn't even care. Like they completely gave up. The Alex Verdugo trade, I mean, he's a solid player. I think that he was kind of the one guy last year that was really trying, I felt like, when everyone else was just kind of running out there and just like, when's the season over, right? When are these 60 games done? And I felt like Verdugo actually really cared. He definitely felt like he wanted to be there. He was playing hard. Garrett Richards, another guy that I've just have been waiting for a long time to be good or to live up to, kind of like what he did sort of early in his career. So who knows? Maybe this is the stop where he puts it together a little bit. Yeah. And then you have some talent on this team. It's not, you still have JD Martinez, Verdugo. Like there's guys that can play. Hunter Renfroe's always sort of felt like more of a, he'll like mash lefties and whatnot, but I mean, he's another guy that he had a pretty good year last year as part of that San Diego team. So, there's guys on this team that can play. Does it look like a playoff type roster? No, but the Red Sox are also a team that if they're in it, they're going to probably find a way to make moves, whether it's a poor move down the road or not. If they find themselves in it around the deadline, the Red Sox won't hesitate to do something. So 25-1, it just seems massive.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think
they used 60 pitchers, starting pitchers last year in a 60-game season.
Yeah.
So, if nothing else, it shows that their farm system is plentiful with starting pitching, at least. Whether it's any good or not, we don't know. But
yeah, they have some prospects. So they've got some guys that I think could potentially make an impact. And, you look at the Orioles, I think, are the clear-cut last-place team in this division. And, I think there's probably some easier wins when you play the Orioles. I want to say I had the yesterday's schedule in front of me. I want to say the Red Sox open with at home at Fenway with the Orioles. So should be a decent favorite. Should be a decent favorite most of this upcoming weekend. I want to say they're like a $1.70 tomorrow.
They're at home versus Baltimore. It's Eovaldi starting for the Red Sox and Means for Baltimore, who was actually a pretty.
I like him. I like
a pretty good stud last year for a team that was so ugly. But minus 170, plus 160 over is 9.5. You want to bet the under? It's minus 120 vig.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Interesting matchup.
I wouldn't be rushing to bet against John Means, but I do think that there's a good chance that the Red Sox get off to a good start, getting to play the Orioles a few times, and I just think that the price is ridiculous. I had to add a little bit on the Sox to win it. But I'll probably end up at Fenway a few times this year. That's friends that live out there. Fenway's a 3-hour drive for me. It's one of my favorite parks.
It is. It's incredible.
I tend to find myself going more to games at Fenway than I do going down to like the city and going to Yankees or Mets. So yeah, just a little sprinkle on 25-1. And then I just think that, if your goal is to fade the Yankees, which mine was, I feel like, okay, so now I have the Red Sox and the Jays covered. The Orioles are not going to factor in. I just can't see it happening. And so I pretty much just have to also beat the Rays, which is, again, it's sort of like, rather than coming out and betting like Rays under or stuff like that, I'm kind of indirectly fading the Rays by going with the Blue Jays. So it all kind of shakes out the way I want it to. And that's why I'm as high as I am on Toronto this year.
Yeah, makes total sense. Let's move on to the NL East with the time we have remaining here.
Sure.
I know already the team that you like quite a bit. I think the wild card in the whole division is the Phillies. There's that guy named Bryce Harper on that team, and he's notorious for starting out fast in seasons. And even in the COVID year last year, he did. But can he carry the team on his own? That remains to be seen. They have a lot of new guys, a lot of young guys. Aaron Nola remains the ace. And, I've always said he's a very solid starting pitcher, but he's probably a 2 or a very good 3. And until they really get an ace in there, and maybe if they're in contention come to the deadline, we're going to see some moves. I mean, what if Chris Sale ends up coming off the Tommy John and throwing well, and the Red Sox are 20 games under 500?
Yeah,
that's when you can get these exciting situations. So I do think they're the X factor in the division, but clearly I agree with you, and I'll give it away. I'm not stealing your thunder, but I think the Braves are the team to beat.
I mean, they were a game away from the World Series. I mean, it all things considered, a more experienced Braves team probably ends up in the World Series last year, because they were right there. They had the Dodgers on the ropes, and tip of the cap to the Dodgers for battling back and getting it done. But this Braves team was awesome last year, and they were really young. So they have all this young pitching, which I'll get into in a minute as well. But Max, so I went back and forth with Tony Finn on Twitter last year because he came out and said, Max Fried is the best left-handed pitcher in baseball. And I know the guys on the Daily Show over on Wager Talk kind of gave him a hard time about it. And this was early, it was like right off the rip in the season. And within a couple of weeks into the year, I think it was pretty apparent that Max Fried is the best left-handed pitcher in baseball. So he nailed that one, in my opinion. And I just think that he's a legitimate ace. You're gonna probably have Mike Soroka back at some point, who missed most of last year with that nasty AC. Was it an ACL? It was when he kind of fell off the mound. He came off the mound. I think he was maybe going to cover first, and he blew out his. I want to say it was his ACL. It pretty much cost him the whole season. And I mean, Soroka, if he can even get back to anything close to what he was in 2019, that's almost like the equivalent of going out and signing like a free agent stud, because you didn't have him at all last year, really. And so to get him back, which I want to say late April is probably the most likely, maybe early May. So they're going to probably have to roll for a month without him. That's a fantastic front end. And now, fun fact, my high school baseball coach was Ian Anderson's father.
Oh, cool.
So
Very cool.
I remember Ian when he was like 5 years old, and I have followed him just being as though he was a superstar locally here. And then obviously he goes on to be a first-round draft pick of the Braves. I followed him pretty much his entire career. I was way high on him last year, and he did not disappoint. He came up and was one of the best pitchers in the entire league from the point in time where he got called up until he ended up finally tailing off a little bit in the playoffs. But I mean, against the Dodgers, no shame in getting knocked around by that Dodgers lineup, really. So I don't even really hold that against him as like a. I mean, other than that, it was nothing but positives for him all year. Unreal control. His command is awesome. Such a fluid delivery, and hitters really have a hard time picking up the ball. So the nice part is, because of the way the schedule went last year, the only teams that have really seen him are teams in his division. But we're back to playing, a full 162 game season. So you're going to see a lot of people are going to be seeing him for the first time. And I know, like, when you saw, even the Yankees last year, he made his major league debut against the Yankees, and then he pitched against the Red Sox the start after. I mean, the first time around, these teams were clueless against him. They couldn't pick up the ball. His stuff is really good. He's got a great off-speed pitch, and he locates. So you put that up there. I mean, Fried, Anderson, eventually Soroka, and then, of course, Charlie Morton, who's a guy that just apparently continues to I'm wondering when his tank starts to run on empty, but another great season last year. And
Drew Smiley.
Yeah, Smiley's another guy where he's a little bit he can be a little erratic, and you don't always know what you're going to get. But I mean, if let's say like Miley or I'm sorry, Smiley, Morton, or both of them pan out, Soroka's coming back. I mean, and then the bullpen is pretty solid. Luke Jackson is really good. They got Will Smith down there. The Minter, the lefty, is good enough. I mean, Chris Martin was pretty good last year. So the bullpen is good enough. I mean, it's definitely a deep bullpen. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to think that the Braves won't be right there again this year, contending just like they were last year. I love the Pash, Christian Pash, outfielder. Acuna is amazing. I mean, Freddie Freeman, just every year is a huge year for him. Acuna is one of the best players in the game. I mean, there's so much talent on this team. And that's leaving out guys like Dansby Swanson, Ozzie Albies, who maybe come back. Maybe Dansby Swanson comes back to earth a little bit, but it's just a loaded team. And right now you can get them at almost 13-1 places to win the World Series. And even if you took a little less than that, even if you had to take down to like 10-1 on this team, because that line is going to be inflated by the fact that the Dodgers and the Padres are getting so much love. So I think I didn't do anything with the division or the pennant, but I think that I had to take a piece of Braves to win the World Series at 13-1. It's just a huge number. And there's probably ways to maneuver out of it if they get to the playoffs, which I think they do. Another bet I love that, and you can call this a homer pick if you want to, but I think Ian Anderson to win NL Rookie of the Year. I saw it plus 600 at FanDuel. I saw it plus 750 on one of my offshore skins that offered it the other day. And I know a lot of people that still use, offshore books and local skins to bet. I saw plus 750 on there. Here's the reason why that's so high. There's a guy named Cabrian Hayes on the Pirates. He's awesome. He deserves he deserves the hype. He's really good, but he's steamed now to being the favorite to win the NL Rookie of the Year. And he very well could, but you're going to have, if Anderson comes out and has a huge season on a Braves team that's likely going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, it's true.
There's no reason that they wouldn't go, okay, well, let's go. Well, because it's kind of a voting type thing. It could go one way or another. Let's say, Cabrian Hayes is still young. He could flop a little bit, or he might not live up to the huge expectations that are on him at this point. So, Anderson's not going to have that sort of, there's going to be no deer in the headlights with him. He came up, he pitched 7 games during the regular season last year, and he pitched in the in an NLDS and an NLCS. So I don't think you're going to have any sort of nerves with him. I think it's just going to be right back to business at the front end of a rotation on a really good team. Plus 750 to win NL Rookie of the Year. There's obviously, and the other one that's sort of up in the mix there, Sixto Sanchez from the Marlins, is a pitcher. So I don't think there's any reason a pitcher can't take home that award. And if I would take down to plus 500, but I saw plus 600s all the way up to plus 750. I think that's a great bet if you can find it. Ian Anderson,
I got 700 at MGM.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There was 750s out there yesterday when I looked. So that's if he has the season I think he's capable of having, there's no way that he'll be one of the top 2 or 3 choices. So give me 750 on that. That's fine. That seems like really, it's a really strong.
It's a smart bet.
Yeah, at that price.
Yep. Well, Adam, I think we're going to sign off here. I have another show coming up on 4th. I'd love to talk to you for another half hour or an hour. It'd be even better if we were at a bar and had a couple of beers next to us too. That would always be good too. But I really appreciate you being on the show today for sure. But before we go, you're a new guy over at sportsmemo.com, and I do believe you are giving away a 4%er in soccer, I think. So you can have the stage and plug yourself to whatever you want to say.
Sure. So what I'll say is this. Yeah, I decided to give the 4%er away for free today. Didn't have the best weekend in college hoop, which is unfortunate because it's my first weekend on Sports Memo. I started with a 5% win. And I've always used, anyone that's followed me on Twitter, I've always used pretty much the same rating scale as Sports Memo. So, it is what it is. It wasn't a great weekend. So decided to put the soccer play I have for this afternoon up for free. It's an international World Cup qualifier in Europe. So it's probably going to be listed under UEFA. I'm going to lay the goal it's an Asian handicap line. So you're going to see it as 1.75 or 1 3/4. All that means is we're taking less juice than if we were to lay a goal and a half. If it lands Hungary winning by 2, you win half of the bet, basically. So you'd return 2 units. If they win by 3 or more, you get the full amount. But the point is, I'm looking at Hungary to sort of run Andorra off the pitch today. Andorra is one of the smallest nations in UEFA. And so for all of these teams, it's their third match in about an 8 or 9 day span. A team like Hungary can handle that, 3 matches in 8 or 9 days, but Andorra doesn't have much of a bench. So generally, when they get on in these qualification runs where they have to play 3 qualifiers in the course of about 9 to 10 days, that third one, you're going to see some tired legs. And not to mention, they played extremely hard in their first one, which cost me which handed me a loss last week, to only lose to Albania 1-0 because they got dominated most of that game. And over the weekend, they played Poland, and they only had the ball for about 15% of the match, which means they defended all match. So I think you're going to see Andorra come out pretty tired today. Hungary's a nation on the rise. They pulled off an incredible result last November to qualify for the 2021 Euro. They played an awesome game with Poland last week, drew 3-3, and they just beat San Marino over the weekend, who's a very similar caliber nation to Andorra. They won that match 3-0 and left a couple of their better players on the bench. I'm going to lay the goal and a half or goal in 1.75 with Hungary. I think this could get ugly. I'll call it 4-0. I think we get a winner regardless of what number you lay.
That's awesome. Awesome. I have to say, it's great to have you on the Sports Memo team. I know you're gonna enjoy it because it's an experience like no other site offers. It's teamwork. Guys aren't afraid to promote other guys, especially when they're running hot. And it's just a really cool atmosphere, very productive, and not toxic, as that word goes.
No, I mean, but, I was going to say, I even tweeted this out the other day. I've looked up to a bunch of guys on this site for years.
That's true. I saw that. Yeah.
Drew Martin and Andrew McInnes have become personal friends of mine. So I've always been a supporter of Wager Talk Sports Memo long before, I was ever had the chance to be affiliated. So definitely looking forward to working with you and working with everyone else on the site, because in my opinion, I've been doing this since 2013. I've always operated my own site. I always said the only site I'll ever join is Wager Talk, or obviously Sports Memo as well. And I've passed on opportunities to join others. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working with everyone. And like opening days tomorrow, I'm excited for what's hopefully as profitable of a baseball season as I had last year, which it will be. Yeah, it was a short season, but I went 41-20 for an 86 unit gain in Major League Baseball last year.
That's good. That's a lot of dogs.
Going to be tough to top, but looking forward to trying to do so.
Yeah. One day at a time, So for the Predictive Playbook, again, I appreciate you coming on the show, Adam. We'll have you probably on, depending on your time, I'd like to have you on in a weekly slot.
Yeah.
And we'll be rotating. It looks like the flagship show is going to be Tony Finn, Rob Vino, myself at 4:30s, and then we're going to bring in a fourth. I'm just going to rotate them around and have at least new blood, because I guess everybody would get tired of hearing me and Rob Vino talk all the time. But Tony Finn is a riot. He's a comedian, you know. And I will say this: if you guys out there in the chat room or watching this archived, if there's one show at Wager Talk you listen to, it's the NBA show. I provide them a betting system every day, and believe me, they're with Joe Ranieri, the host. They laugh and laugh and laugh, but you're going to learn a lot. It's informative. You get best bets from some of the best guys like Ski Profit, Steve Merrill, who appears on my show. So I highly recommend you at least get that show, which I think starts around 2:30 Eastern Standard Time or thereabouts. It's all listed. You can find it out at wagertalk.com and sportsmemo.com and the YouTube site. So for John Ryan and Adam Trigger and the Predictive Playbook, may all the wins be yours.